9 habits that help you succeed in life. Hello and welcome back to another episode. And today we're going to talk about the habits that you and I have implemented over time to help us get ahead in life or succeed in life overall. Today's episode is actually a follow-up to the video that you see on the screen about the sacrifices that we had to do to get ahead and improve our lifestyle. And many of you have interacted and left us a lot of comments and questions and asked to get more episodes like this. So today we're going to do something kind of similar, but with more of a positive spin to it. So last time we called them sacrifice, this time we're going to call them habit. So I'm going to actually start off with you, Anthony. What is one of those habits that you would like to start our conversation with today?
Yes, I think one of the most powerful habits that you can start implementing in your life is improve your environment and try to optimize it as much as possible, because you have 24 hours, I have 24 hours. How can we make the most out of it? And one of the things that you can start implementing right now in order to improve your environment is find ways on how you can go to sleep more efficiently, so you can have the next day more time to start thinking about the business, to start thinking about your work, and you're more clear. And one of the things that have improved a lot on my end is not drinking alcohol before going to sleep.
Like that nightcap evening drink that you take to relax at the end of the day. So not a good idea.
Not a good idea, and multiple reasons why. Before, we used to wear these different devices that were tracking
the ring device.
One of those was called the Oura Ring. And when we used to wear that, we realized how much of a difference it made once we started wearing that, because it tells us, okay, because you drank this beverage or whatever you were drinking, okay, your heart rate was above normal. And why does it matter to you when your heart rate is above normal? Because you will not have a restful sleep. You will not reach those different stages of sleep that you need to reach in order to be completely restful. Another thing that I implemented on that habit of optimization during sleep was drinking more beverages at night that has honey instead of just regular sugar. And why not sugar, you might be wondering, because sugar is very processed, especially refined sugars. So that's why I decided to just take more honey.
And honey is natural.
And the way I see it is life. Like bees are making that honey, so I'll just consume that. And on top of that, I like to add a little bit of magnesium to my drinks every day. I have a couple of drops I add additionally to our drinks. And throughout the day, we're drinking that. And by adding magnesium to my drinks, it just helps me to get better sleep. So this is how I optimize my environment. What about you? What's your next habit?
One of mine, it's actually more on the self-development side, more than like actual hacks, and is to stop comparing myself to other people. I realized that a while back that it didn't do any good to my development or my evolution, regardless of who I was comparing myself to. If I was comparing myself to someone who was actually more evolved, then I'll get depressed and feel bad and start realizing, hey, like I haven't really done much with my life. But then if I compare myself with someone who have achieved less, then it didn't help me either, because I felt superior, and that didn't really incentivize me to want to grow more. So I stopped doing that whole comparison thing with anyone who was outside of myself. I still do a comparison, but I only compare myself, right? I compare myself to the person that I used to be a couple of years ago. And then I ask myself, hey, are you a more evolved version of what you used to be? If the answer is yes, then congrats. Okay. Then the next question is, how can you evolve more to this new version of yourself? But if the answer to the very first question is, are you more evolved than who you were 2 years ago? And if the answer is no, then we need to stop and sort of like reassess what could be done different, and how was it that things did not work out? What was about it that didn't allow me to move forward, and things like that. And I think that when you compare yourself with who you were, that's the best benchmark, because at the end of the day, you and I are very different people. So I shouldn't be comparing myself to you and my sisters or my parents or anyone, because everybody has a different lifestyle. Even if they're around your circle, people act and think differently. And so you're not necessarily comparing apples to oranges. Like, the best way to check whether you have changed for the better or for the worse, and if you are looking to change that behavior, then you should only compare yourself to yourself. That's how you know, because you will hopefully know yourself better. No one else will know you better than anybody else. So that was one of the main habits that I have implemented over the last couple of years. And it has helped me a lot to improve who I am and continue to keep improving. What about you? What's the next tip?
My next habit is to make myself a daily reminder to ask people, how are you doing? How are you doing? Whenever I go and meet someone in a networking event, I want to ask them, okay, how are you? What do you do? And actually be interested on what they have to say. There's a very interesting book that you should read. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. One of the key points that you're going to get from that book is that if you want to get ahead in life, you should definitely improve your interpersonal skills. One of those skills is asking people, how are they doing? You're going to realize down the road that a lot of people want to tell you stuff. And because they want to tell you stuff, that's how you make connections. That's how you make true connections. So that's going to be a very important habit that you should start implementing as soon as possible.
And I think that when you genuinely ask people how are they doing, you actually care about them. You're humanizing that relationship, that conversation, because we live in a world where we're always running around trying to get things done, plenty of drama. And sometimes when we're bombarded with all these to-dos, we sort of feel like we don't exist because we're so busy thinking about making other people happy or doing things for other people. And then when all of a sudden someone else comes in and asks you, hey, how about you? How are you doing? It really, really humanizes things. And people, tend to take a break and really think about, I haven't really thought about that.
And not many people ask them.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, I guess I'm doing fine, or I'm not. And then they start venting. But, you give them that component that, hey, you think no one is watching you or no one is caring about you, but someone is in fact there. And it doesn't have to be someone close. It could be a stranger. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all the collection of, beings living in the same world together. So, I mean, that's how I look at what you just share.
That's great. That's great. So what about you? What's another habit that you have in mind?
Well, another habit that I started implementing, although it was very difficult, is to stop caring what other people say. Especially, people like you and me who come with our background. I mean, we both grew up in America, where everybody is always constantly paying attention to what the other person is doing, what they're wearing, how they're behaving. And coming from an Asian background as well, that's even more intense, right? Because at least in the Chinese culture with my parents, they're always comparing their children to the other children, right? Like, oh, my daughter got 100 in math. What did yours get? Or like an 80 something. Or my daughter plays the piano and plays the violin and speaks 3 languages. And then what does yours do? And things like that. So we kind of grew up in that environment, and we're always seeking for that external validation and paying attention to, oh, my parents said that I was a good kid, or the teacher said that I was a good kid, or oh, my other friends are saying that I should be this way. And then in reality, that's just really, really overwhelming, because people will always have an opinion about you, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right opinion about you. People think they know you, but they don't necessarily know you. Some comments come from, the bottom of their good heart, and they generally mean well. But you and I know that sometimes people don't necessarily say things because they want you to be well off. They just say things out of the spite, and they're hurtful comments too. So I realized that, if I start blocking all of that noise, and I like to think that I was raised in a good ethical way. I have my values, and as long as I'm not hurting people or actively hurting the beings or animals or children around me. I'm not stealing. I'm not, I don't know, physically hurting other people. Then I think I'm onto a good path. And it's just simply try to, look for ways to improve, validate things within myself, trust my instinct. Like if I do something, what sensation does that create in me? Does that help me feel like I am actually evolving or doing something good for society? Or is it something that one way or the other causes me guilt? And that's how slowly I started developing more of my intuition, kind of like trying to understand what's right or wrong. And I know it sounds very cliche, like especially when people say, oh, like women's intuition and stuff like that, but it's the truth. Like you can't really go by what people say all the time because people are in different stages in their life. So maybe they do have a very genuine opinion about you, but because of their lack of experiences compared to what you have seen, that might not be enough of an observation. And like I said, not everybody wants your well-being. And so in the end, I decided that if I start blocking that noise, then I will have less fending off to do or like less things to worry about what people have to say, and then just focus truly on what I need to do and continue to do good. And we all know that ultimately, if you feel good within yourself, then you do better with others as well, because you're no longer seeking that external source of, call it energy, love, or validation.
That's right. I can appreciate it.
Yeah. What about you? What's the next one?
The next one that I have is positivity, smiling, and energy. What does that mean? So whenever you're going somewhere, it's not just enough to just say, hey, how are you doing? You need to express curiosity. You need to express that you're happy to see that person. So that means that smiling more, have more good energy around you is going to attract so many things to yourself. And the best example I can give you, whenever I go to Chipotle, I love Chipotle. And whenever I present smile or just sending them good energy overall, one, they treat me much better than the average consumer, I would say. But also from time to time, maybe they want to throw some free guacamole in there. So I'm like, oh, thank you for that.
I think it's the smile, right? Like, especially in New York City, where people are always on the go, on the rush, and, overall angry because it's like they're hustling and trying to get ahead in life. And people don't expect to see that smile, right? Like, I'm sure you've come across sometimes in the subway where you see somebody minding their own business, but then all of a sudden somebody smiles at you. It's very hard not to reciprocate that smile. You want to smile back. And then in your case with Chipotle, it's like, chances are, we were eating there the other day, and there was a guy that was a complete, a-hole, for the lack of a better word. And he was just very mean to the girl that was helping us. I don't know, for some reason, this individual thought that by yelling more, he will get more food. And then in reality, that's just not the right way to treat people. And so, like, I guess they're so accustomed to dealing with, certain types of consumers. And then all of a sudden, when they see you smiling, you're just, one out of the blue. It's like seeing sunshine, and all of a sudden they're like, they want to reciprocate you. By that, I'm not saying that we get free walk all the time in Chipotle, but, it doesn't cost you anything just to share a smile with people. It's free, and it makes a big difference when you smile at people. Overall.
Yes.
Yeah.
What about you?
So it goes along that line of being happy and smiling, and that has to do with gratitude. And I know it sounds very cliche, but I do give thanks every single morning when I wake up and every single night when I go to sleep. And by saying thank you, I'm not specifically talking about, oh, I am grateful for my investment portfolio or for the team that we have, although we're truly grateful for those components in our lives. But I'm talking about something that it's more essential, like the ability to wake up the next day after you're gone to sleep. People take it for granted, but like it is truly a privilege that you go to bed, you close your eyes, and you can still open them the next day and wake up. We have heard about countless people in our circle who have gone to sleep and never woke up. And I'm not talking about old people. I'm talking about people around our age, like with some health conditions, Some of them weren't even aware that they had a health condition because they were too busy doing things than living life. And they went to bed and they never woke up. So like that kind of like gives you perspective that we shouldn't take life for granted. Like it can be gone in a minute without you even realizing it. So that's the very first thing I do. I give thanks for the fact that I can wake up the next day and I'm gifted another day of my life to continue living.
I was watching this video yesterday where this guy was interviewing people on the streets, and he started asking people, would you take a $10 million if I give that to you right now? Most people say yes. But then he asked, okay, but if you take this $10 million today, you will not wake up tomorrow. And most people say no. And that's the value that you don't see, like by waking up. Like it's a blessing to wake up.
I mean, 10 million is nice, but if you're with a terminal illness, 10 million doesn't really do anything. I mean, you'll probably buy some comfort with the little time that you have left, but the truth is you might not wake up the next day. So that's just one scenario. Another thing that I like to give thanks to is my sight. Like, what a beautiful way to start the day. You open your eyes and you can see the sun. Some people are blind. Some people can't see anything. They have to wear glasses. Another thing that I am grateful for is it's the great company that I have. I wake up and I see you next to me. That's something that I treasure because, you know, finding good quality people, it's just not so easy to come across with. Another thing that I am super grateful, although it sounds so simple, it's water. Like I go to the kitchen and we have drinking water. You and I have traveled throughout the world. We've seen places where water is not even possible, and we don't even have to go that far. Like just our family alone, like your mom, your grandma, my parents, they didn't have drinking water available when growing up. They had to go down to the river with a bucket, you know, put some of the garbage on the side away and just take the water and drink that water. It was either that or nothing.
My mom the other day was telling me this story, and she told you the same thing.
Yeah.
That they were not well off. They didn't have much money for the food.
Just a humble background.
Yeah, humble background. And so they're from the countryside, from Ecuador. And she was telling me that when she used to go and look for the water, when she went to the river, there was a bunch of garbage on the river. So what she did is she just pulled the garbage out, take the water out of the river, boil it up and drink it. And she told me that every bath she needed to take purging medicine because she felt ill on her stomach. And when she went to do number 2, a lot of parasites came out of her. So that's just a reminder that we need to be grateful for what we have.
Yeah, and conscious about it. And like, I know you and I sometimes talk about it, like especially here in New York City in the summer. Like, it really gets to me when I see the hydrants being opened and water just thrown out on the street. Like, if there are some kids playing around with it, like, I can live with that because, hey, like, they're building memories and they're having fun. But more often than not, they just open it up and the water just floods through the streets. And nobody cares about it. No one is drinking it. No one is using it. And when you compare that to like your parents, and I know that happened in the past, but like the reality today is not too far off. Like I said, we've been to places where they don't have drinking water. Like when we were in Peru, up in Rainbow Mountain, people had to wake up at like 4 a.m. just to go to the river with their donkey and just get like 2 buckets of water. And that might have not been the best or cleanest water, but that was the water that they had. And so like every time like I wake up and I go to the kitchen, I'm just like, it's only a step away. Like I don't have to go down the river and carry buckets of water. I can just open the faucet and drink water, and water is life. And for something like that, I am very, very grateful and conscious about how fortunate we are. And aside from that, I noticed that the more gratitude you give, you start changing your brain composition. Mm-hmm. Your brain starts to get wired very differently, and then you start seeing life very differently. So it's not just the act or the fact of being grateful, but it's just you're actually changing your brain for the better. And it has been proven scientifically that when you are grateful, you think better, you see life differently, you no longer see the problems of life like problems. You actually see them as a lesson in life that you are meant to face at that moment, because you couldn't have learned that lesson otherwise. Like, you could have read a book, but you might not necessarily get the same out of it. But then when you're living through that experience and you're trying to figure things out, you are truly, truly learning the lesson. So like, just different shifts of that sort helps you enjoy life better and become a much better problem solver as well. So that was for me, and I know that was a mouthful what I said. What about you? Like, any other habits you want to share?
One of the habits that I needed to make that switch is not taking advantage of people. And what do I mean by that? In my culture, where I came from, my mentality was I will not let other people take advantage of me, but I will take advantage of other people. I don't know, that translates.
It doesn't translate really good, but like, unfortunately, that's just how things are in other parts of the world. And it's, either I get taken advantage of, or like I will take advantage of you, and nobody's gonna sit around and wait to be taken advantage of. So you just go ahead and you act. It's not necessarily the right way, but I think back then it was necessary because it was about survival where you grew up, and to a certain extent, even where I grew up was the same way.
Yeah, people like there, it's not like they care about your feelings. Your friends and family, they're in a sense they will bully you up to a point. So
it's tough love. They bully you so you can toughen up and face some life in a kind of way. Yeah.
Love. And when you get in business, things like it will not work out like that. You'll not get long-lasting business relationships. Like, people, they don't want to associate themselves with you in the first place.
Especially if you try to cut them out of their revenue or stuff like that.
So in a way, here, thanks to Lucelia too, she opened my eyes that we need to find a way to find a win-win relationship for anything that you do in life if you truly want to succeed in life. And it has made a huge difference in the things that we do nowadays, because that's the way we look at things. How can we find a win-win scenario between maybe you guys, the audience, between I and we, what we do in NOVARISE? And even though I was raised in a certain environment, with years of practice, that can change. Any mentality can change. So you just require work and dedication as well.
And the willingness to change.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah, it is possible, but you first need to be aware of what you're doing. And more often than not, like, when you deal with such a big cultural shock, it's like, what do you mean? Like, I take advantage of others? Like I needed to survive. So like, it is tough, but then over time, you start seeing the other side of the coin. And just like you were taking advantage of people, I'm sure there are plenty of instances in where you were taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And obviously that's not a nice feeling. So like, that creates a kind of, I'm not sure if the word is anger, but it's like you want to get back at other people as well, because that's how life has treated you. So it is a vicious cycle. I'm not saying it's ideal, like, and I'm not saying that here in the US people don't do that, but like, at least we consciously make the decision to not associate with people like that. And with the circle that we do associate, we try to do the right thing. And then if it's not easy to do the right thing because they're difficult people, then we just move on and meet new people. Like, that's in essence what we do.
Yep. So now it's time for you. What's your next habit?
So my next one, and it's one that I've been doing pretty much since my teenage years, is just to exercise. And when I say exercise, I'm not talking about, I have to lift a certain amount of weight or work out a certain amount of hours just so I could maintain a certain physique or anything like that. I don't view exercise that way. I view exercise as a way to take care of my temple, because at the end of the day, your body is your temple. If you're sick, if you're physically sick, you really can't do much. And there's a big difference between hitting 100 years old, miserable and sick with a machine hooked up to you, and getting to 100 years old and still be able to move around and be sharp. So like, I aim for the latter, because if you don't take care of your body, no one else is going to take care of you. And it sounds very simple, but it's so silly sometimes when I see people and they take better care of their cars than their own body. Like, they oil it, they take it to detail and they clean it, but then their health is just like blah. And
what would you say some of the exercises that have improved your well-being overall, like the most important ones?
that will depend on the day, but for the most part, I focus a lot on mobility exercises. I mean, because we do sit a lot. So when you sit for a long time, your body gets stiffened up, especially like when you're in this position in front of a computer all the time, your back, your neck, your shoulders. We live in a society and we're like this most of the day. So like our necks, it's actually curved down, and that also creates problem in the back. So most of my exercises involve moving. I do some weightlifting, but not as intense, because I notice that when I go really, really heavy with weightlifting, my body aches the next or 2 days, which for some people is great, but for me, it's distracting. Like I can't concentrate because I am in pain. So I've just managed to lower the weightlifting portion of it. I still do it once a week, but I do it on a weekend. And when I know that I don't have any more work, that maybe I'm taking Sundays off. So like I go really, really hard at it. And if I need to relax and then just do nothing on Sundays, not that we ever do nothing on Sundays, but like you get what I mean by like not really have to actively think about solutions or like ways to create content or to get the business ahead, that's when I do the weightlifting portion of it. But for the most part, I want to move because I want to bring blood through the rest of my body, because by bringing blood, there's circulation, there's oxygen, and then so my entire body, it's getting the nutrients that it needs, more so than, oh, I just want to exercise because I want to look good. I think looking good or having a good physique is just a byproduct of exercising, but that shouldn't be the main focus unless you make a living out of it, right? Like that we see people who are personal trainers, and obviously you have to look the part, because no one is going to hire a personal trainer that looks sloppy or like it's not in shape. Like what's the whole point, right? Like you're leading by example. But other than that, I just love to exercise. I don't view it as a workout. I view it as a way to just give my body the love and the attention that it deserves. And it's also a mental break from work, because I think you and I agree that when we're exercising or when we're just going out for a walk, the best ideas come to us at that point, because we're taking a break from like all the madness and we're just doing stuff.
Mine comes when I'm taking a shower.
Oh, yeah. Well, mine is usually when I'm exercising. Yeah.
And just to add a little bit more about the exercises, because what I'm about to say is connected to the point number one about optimization and finding, okay, what's giving you the best output for the input that you're giving something, right? And recently I went to a cardiologist and they did me a heart test to make sure that my vitals are working properly. And they told me that my vitals are very similar to one athlete, like not those professional athletes, but like better than most people.
I mean, you're pretty active.
Yeah. And then I started analyzing, okay, why did he say that? I only exercise like twice a week or maybe 3 times a week the most. And I think one of the biggest exercises that has helped my entire body to function properly is kickboxing. Why kickboxing? Because it engages multiple things or multiple body parts in your body. Example, legs, core, arms, chest. It's pretty much you're working your entire body and as well as your brain. And I will say one of the exercises that has helped me a lot to be in good shape is kickboxing.
And I think it's more than just the exercise, it's just the coordination, right? From my understanding is that not only you're moving physically, but like it requires a lot of mental coordination. You have to anticipate the punch or the kick that's coming your way and block it and then figure out ways to move.
Yeah.
So it's a very holistic way to work out rather than just doing a bunch of repetitions with the weightlifting and stuff like that, right?
And going back to the point of repetitions and working out, I think if you're working out, doing weightlifting, I'm all about squats or deadlifts. Why those two movements? Because it engages pretty much your entire body at the moment of doing the exercise. So perfect. So
back to optimization, you're trying to work out the most part of the body with the least amount of movement at the same time, right? So we talked about exercise, we talked about being grateful and things like that. Anything else you have in mind that you would like to add in terms of your habits?
I think for me, the next habit is having wholesome food. And what I mean by that is like not just eating veggies, because I don't believe that your body can just live on veggies alone. You need the protein. But let me explain what I mean by saying this. So the other day I was listening to a podcast, and in this podcast, there was a doctor talking about how he treats patients when they come to him about depression, anxiety, and any other illnesses that you can have. And he said that the first thing that he does is assign the person a wholesome diet that has a lot of bacteria on it. For example, kimchi, like yogurt. You can start Googling, okay, what other foods have the good bacteria? Because the way he was explaining is that he said, by you having the right bacteria in your gut, it can also stabilize your mood, energy levels, like how are you feeling overall. So that's why he started like prescribing some type of holistic food that has a lot of bacteria, because
but natural bacteria. Not like the bacteria from like the river water.
Not at all, yeah. So very important. And he said that when patients came back to him, most of those patients were feeling great, they were feeling happy. They just didn't have a holistic food. In addition to that, our body is connected. Our gut bacteria, our organs right here in the middle area, all the way to the heart and to the brain, all of them are connected. Some of these parts, they have also neurons as well. So that's why you need to take care of your heart, brain, gut as well. So it's very important to have those foods. And now that you made it towards this point, we have a bonus habit.
Yeah, and this bonus habit, it's slightly different than what we've been talking about because it doesn't necessarily sound very positive, but the outcome that you can get out of it is quite positive. And that is anticipating the worst case scenario in everything you do. And I know it's not nice to think about what's the worst that can happen, but I've noticed through experience that when you do that, you sort of like anticipate possible outcomes, which one, it makes you become a more flexible person, because a lot of us tend to get very unhappy when we have a certain expectation. Hey, like if I do A, I have to get B. And a lot of people get fixated and B, and it has to be B. But what if the worst case scenario, you wind up with scenario C or D or E, right? Like that's not the end of the world. You're just not getting exactly what you want, but you're getting a different scenario. And because you already anticipated it, your expectations, they reset. You are actually more flexible, and you just realize that life doesn't necessarily happen in one path. Like there are multiple paths for you to achieve something. And then in addition to that, you become a much better prepared person because you already anticipated all the possible outcomes and different plans to tackle certain scenarios that might arise from it. That shows that you have already prepared for something like that, instead of like, oh my God, I did not see this coming, and it just completely takes you by surprise. And when something takes you by surprise, what usually happens to people, they get shocked, right? Like they take a while to snap out of it, sometimes even days or sometimes even weeks. And you don't want to do that. Like you just want to anticipate that, become more flexible. By becoming more flexible, that helps you remain more calm and just accept the things that come your way, because whatever happens, it's what's meant to happen. And you just have to, learn to accept it and then just figure it out. How can I make the best out of it? So that's what thinking about the worst case scenario have in a way benefit me in the long run. So I don't see it necessarily as a bad thing. It's just simply a path that you have to go through in order to become more evolved on the other side. Now, let us know which of these habits resonated the most with you. Do you have any new ones you would like to share, not just with us, but also this beautiful community? We can't wait to read them all. And we'll be seeing you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.